Why the Most Foolish People End Up in Power is the title of a YouTube video, an interesting mix of history, philosophy, and psychology, trying to explain the structural forces behind bad leadership. Now, in nature, forces have a precise technical definition, but in the social sciences, forces are only metaphors. There are no hidden causal forces operating with the same precision as gravity or electromagnetism. There is no single, pinpointable, indefinitely repeatable cause and effect structure in political behavior, and that seriously limits the confidence we can have when ascribing causality to political outcomes. It would in fact invalidate this approach as a scientific one. One of the main witnesses relied on is Machiavelli. He's quoted a few times, I assume correctly, though I haven't double-checked. But even so, I doubt he would have endorsed the way his ideas are summarized here. Machiavelli admired cunning, adaptability, and strength, even when it was morally ugly. Foolishness, for Machiavelli, was a fatal flaw, not a tool of power. His practical focus, especially in The Prince, is not about how fools rise to power. It's about how, once you have acquired a position, through birthright, conquest, election, you survive. How you navigate fortune, fortuna, and use skill, virtu, to avoid being destroyed faster than others. It's survival strategy, not selection theory. The video, however, is about selection, and invoking Machiavelli in this context is not reconstructing his ideas historically, it's ventriloquizing him, using his name to narrate the author's own modern moral worldview. You can do that, even in scientific writing, but only if it's made clear that what you are offering is a metaphor, not evidence. Moreover, the fact that he misquotes Machiavelli, who was concerned with downfall, not rise, creates a deeper blind spot. He takes a framework about collapse, stupid people fall, and tries to apply it to selection, stupid people rise, hearing Machiavelli's warning about incompetence and somehow interpreting it as a theory of leadership success. But this misreading hides a fundamental paradox. If foolish people cannot select themselves into positions of power, if they need supposedly competent people to help them rise, then either everyone involved is foolish, or the author has no real understanding of how leadership selection actually happens. He cannot explain how stupidity organizes itself into power without first being empowered by others. At that point, the distinction between smart and stupid breaks down, and the whole theory collapses into moral frustration, not causal insight. His diagnosis feels more insightful than most. But ultimately, he remains trapped within the very emotional and moral narratives he believes he is analyzing. Like Neo still inside the Matrix, describing it, but unable to truly leave it. But I am not channeling Morpheus. I want to be Neo too. Broadly speaking, I do share the observation that leadership selection today cannot be explained simply by formal skills and competencies. Does a university degree ensure competence? No, it doesn't. Can you be competent and still make a decision under uncertainty that turns out wrong? Yes. Could you make a decision today that seems foolish, but tomorrow becomes a success? Also yes. How do we know who's an imposter and who is not? How can we even define what competency really means, especially when contexts change? Is a smart leader smart across all contexts, or only within specific ones? And if leadership is context-specific, how do you match the right person to the right circumstance? None of these difficult questions are reflected in the video. As a result, the author gets closer to seeing some of the relevant factors, but he still cannot offer a real solution. Saying, "We need more accountability and feedback" sounds appealing, but it cannot simply be implemented by wishing it so. And which institution has ever put out a job ad saying, "Stupidity preferred"? The real problem isn't only outcomes, it's that current performance management systems are flawed in their very design. Now, about the German two-tier board structure. He sees it idealistically and therefore draws the wrong conclusion. We must separate roles to get smarter leaders. This is wrong. This is fiction. In reality, the supervisory board is composed of worker representatives, often coming from large bureaucratic unions, and shareholder representatives, typically executives from other companies. Both groups are shaped by the same flawed political and social dynamics that produce management selection bias in the first place. Separating management and oversight formally does not guarantee competence, any more than separating passengers from the pilot guarantees a safer flight. But let's not dismiss the German system entirely by thinking, there's nothing relevant to learn here. That would also be wrong. The real value of the German system is not in producing smarter leaders. It is about forcing negotiation, forcing argument, forcing coalition building at the top. It reflects something already understood by Solon. A good outcome depends on a good process of decision-making. You cannot legislate good outcomes. You can only legislate frameworks that encourage repeated interaction, distribute decision-making among those concerned, and create conditions where good enough outcomes emerge over time. This explains why Germany sees fewer labor strikes compared to France or the UK, for example. Disputes are funneled into formalized committees, not for ritual's sake, but to stabilize negotiation. This is the real spirit of Greek democracy. Not everyone votes on everything. Issues are decided by those directly concerned, in the place where the problem is located, not in a distant capital like Berlin, but locally, like Wolfsburg. Greek democracy had elements we look down on today: slavery, exclusion of women. But to dismiss it entirely is a mistake. Judged by our own experience, their system, at least structurally, was closer to identifying the real factors behind stability and workable solutions. I am currently writing a book about exactly this, called Shemot. I'm glad I'm not alone in thinking there is a serious problem, but the diagnostic tools reflected in the video are insufficient to give you the answers you wanted, or perhaps believe you have already found.